Good evening. To continue on the Gemara that we were discussing on Tuesday, I guess it was, or Monday in our last class, I want to continue on with just some insights into the various ideas expressed at Gemara, and we'll actually continue it again in our next class. The Gemara had started off going through the pasuk in Yeshaya, "V'hayu emunas itecha, chosen Yeshuos chochmas v'das," and it explained each word in this pasuk connects to one of the orders of the Mishne. Emuna is Ra'im, itecha is Moed, chosen is Nashim, Yeshuos is Nezikin, chochmas is Kachim, and Das is Seder Taharos. And I want to share with you just various insights, either in general about all of these or about some of them in particular. Rav Kook, on the connection between Emunah, faith, and Zroim, Rav Kook says that Chazal tell us that at creation, Adam Harishon was only permitted to eat vegetables and fruits. He was not allowed to eat any meat. And it was only after the story of the flood that man was then permitted to eat meat. And he thereby understands that the eating of meat is something that was granted to man as a result of man's falling. It's not a positive thing, but a negative thing. But that man, in his purest state of connecting to God, is only a vegetarian. And Adam Harishon, part of his fall was a result of a faith in Hashem, and that lack of faith continued on through the story of the Mabul of the flood. So therefore, one who has the proper emunah, the proper faith and connection to Hashem, that goes to Seder Zra'im, the order of agriculture, because such people are only involved in agriculture and not in other pursuits. Later on, the Gemara had said that Yeshuos, salvations, refers to Nezikin, the order of the Mishne that talks about damages. And Rav Kook points out that so many issues that arise in the world between human beings come as a result of selfishness, the result of one person saying, I want, and I don't want someone else to have. He says that if all people would understand that true success, even in material success in this world, comes when we are focused on doing good for others. And as things develop more, each person looking out for others, that will bring about tremendous material success and peace within the world. The entire Seder Nezikin, which deals with damages, is dealing with interpersonal relationships, improving interpersonal relationships, until everything you do is born out of concern for other people. So therefore, Sefer, the word Yeshuos, salvations, if you really want to save the human race, that's worrying about the order of damages that focuses on caring and paying attention to the needs and wants of others. The Maharal divides up these 6 orders by saying that the first 2 are the most physical. The middle 2 orders of Mishnah are a mix of the physical and spiritual, and the last 2 orders are purely spiritual. He says, why is Emunah, faith, connected to agriculture? He says it's because when you plant a seed, you get back what you planted. You don't plant a seed and get back something different. It's the same thing with a person who is faithful, who can be trusted. If you give him something, he's going to return to you what you gave to him. And being as that's involved in the production of food, the morale understands that's the most physical. Moed, which is the holidays, which is Itecha, he says that's also connected to the physical because the Yomim Tovim and their dates are all dependent on the sun and the moon. He says that the sun and the moon are not quite as physical as the earth, so that's why it's a step up, not quite as physical, but it is still a mixture of the physical, and it's still basically physical things that are being focused upon. He says Nashim, which focuses on marriage, and Nizikin, which focuses on damages. These two orders represent a mixture of the physical and the spiritual. They're physical because marriage is a physical act, and damaging people's property and otherwise interacting with them in the field of commerce, that's quite physical. But at the same time, we're talking about relationships in these areas. And relationships are things that are spiritual. So Nashim and Nizikin are a mix of the physical and the spiritual. Finally, Kachim and Taros, those are the most spiritual of all. But Kachim, which is very much involved in buildings and animals and produce, that's a little bit more on the physical side, as opposed to when it comes to Taros, that's something which is not really physically based whatsoever. The ideas of Tum and Tara, that's the most spiritual of all. But the Gemara had finished off that Yiras Hashem hi yotzaro, that even after someone has all of these things, but it's the fear of God which is his storehouse. Why is it the fear of God and not the love of God? So Maral makes a very interesting and important point. He says that when someone is involved in a relationship of love, that means by definition that there are two parties here who love each other and are therefore deciding to connect with one another through that love. That's not a full connection to God, because a full connection to God means that if one really understands God, then there's no self. It's complete negation of the self. So that's something that is only possible in a relationship of yira, of awe. And when we truly appreciate what God is compared to us and completely nullify ourselves before him. Of course, let's keep in mind that our relationship with God is really supposed to be two-faceted, one both on Ava and Yira. There is a place for being a being in relationship with God, and there's also a place for self-nullification in relationship with God. In terms of the idea, the Ian Yaakov says that one way to symbolize what this Gemara is telling us over here is that the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash had 6 branches, the lights and all pointed to the center. And he says in the same way, the 6 orders of the Mishnah all are there to point you to Yiras Hashem hi otzaro, that the main thing is the awe of God. The Ber Moshe wants to compare it to the 6 days of the week, And Shabbos, which the Zohar famously says that Bereshis is Yoreh Shabbos, is having awe for Shabbos, that Shabbos stands for the awe of Hashem. In the next Gemara that we had seen, it started discussing the questions that a person is asked after he passes away. And the first question was, Nasata v'nasata be'emuna. Did you toil in emuna? Which, by the way, the Pashut, the simple explanation is that were your business dealings done faithfully. But others explain that it means that did you spend time toiling in matters of faith? Did you just take your faith for granted? Or did you toil in really bringing yourself to a true understanding of faith in Hashem? The next one is Kavati Itam La Torah, and the Eliyah Rabbah explains that because if somebody does not engage honestly in his business practices, then you can't even ask him afterwards whether or not he learned Torah. Because someone who is dishonest in business, all of his Torah study would be a desecration of Hashem's name. So that's why prior to asking about study of Torah, the first question a person is asked after 120 years is, did he deal with his business dealing faithfully? The Me'orei Naim, the first Chernobyl Rebbe, says in the name of the Baal Shem Tov that if a person studies, say Daf Yomi just finished learning Bava Kama, if a person studies where it talks about exchanging a cow for a donkey, that's very precious to Hashem. But if a person actually engages in trading cows for donkeys and does so according to how the halacha dictates what are the correct ways of dealing with those matters in commerce, that is a much higher level of being. Because everything that Hashem created is there in order for us to utilize and use under the guise of what the Torah tells us. And if a person is always careful to be honest in his business dealings, then at every moment of the day, he's setting aside time for Torah, because everything that he's doing is being guided by Torah. The last thing I want to share with you this evening is Pilpalta B'Chachma. Did you delve deeply into wisdom? And the Shaloh HaKadosh says as follows. This is talking about pilpul that's true. Back in the Shaloh's time, people had gotten so wildly creative in their pilpul that they said things that were clearly and obviously false. They were turning the Torah study into mental gymnastics instead of a pursuit of understanding the truth and understanding Hashem's will. So the Shaloh wants to say that's why it says Pilpalta B'Chachma. Was your pilpul done in a wise way, that it was part of a pursuit of the truth? He says every single person has the ability, by questioning what the Gemara says and trying to understand the various halachos, we all have the ability to create new insights in the truth of the Gemara, in the truth of Rashi, and we could therefore contribute to and grow the body of Torah, because the crown of Torah is there for everybody. And a person should never think to himself, what am I and who am I, that I think I can come up with my own ideas. But the fact of the matter is, if somebody is studying Torah with sincerity and toiling to understand, as long as his goal is the truth, then he will end up being able to develop new and fascinating insights in Torah. Thank you very much for listening. Have a wonderful evening. Mirz Hashem. In our next class, next week, I have one more insight to share with you, a very kind of overarching approach to understand this entire Gemara, and we will see that in Mirz Hashem in our next class. Bye-bye.